It's good to be here, celebrating Prior, and in particular, it's very good to see you, Andrew. For those of you who don't know, Andrew was one of the pioneers, maybe the first, to lecture in Denmark on Prior's books, even in Prior's lifetime in the 60s. So it's very good that you, as one of the Danish Prior study pioneers, is present today. Thank you. Andrew is also important for another reason. He was my external examiner, both at my PhD defense in 1980 and also at my doctoral defense in 88. And at my doctoral defense in 88, I made a promise. The most substantial criticism, which was completely fair, was that I didn't pay enough attention to Prior's Peircean inspiration. So I made a promise on the spot that I would do some. I would work with the Prior and Peircean inspiration later on, and write on it and not forget it. And so that was part of the deal at my defense in '88. You probably forgot. You know. Good. So I worked with that after '88, and it's clearly something I should have done earlier, because there's an obvious Peircean inspiration in Prior's work, and I'll say something about that. Of course, it's also interesting that Peirce died in 1914. Now, I'm not into reincarnation or anything like that, but it is interesting that Prior got many of his ideas on logic from Peirce, and he found the works of Charles Sanders Peirce extremely stimulating. He had very much the same idea on logic as Peirce. They had the same idea on the relation to natural language, and the same emphasis on the importance of history, the history of logic, and also the same idea concerning the importance of common sense, relation between common sense and logic. So Prior found a lot in the works of Charles Sanders Peirce which he could use, and he very often quoted Peirce. Here's one quotation from Formal Logic, in which he says that although the works of Charles Sanders Peirce are extremely difficult, there is nobody who has had a keener eye for the essentials than Peirce. He has had a very keen eye for essentials. And you can find several of that kind of quotations in the works of Prior. He found very great inspiration in the works of Peirce. Of course, I cannot go into all that, but just a few points. Prior mentions Peirce's work on truth functions, and this is from formal logic, and he says that Peirce, even before Schaeffer, showed that you can reduce the number of truth functions just to one, single one, and of course Schaeffer proved that in 1913, but this was also proved by Peirce already in 1880, but not published. But the paper is there, and he continued to work with the same problem in 1902. So this was fascinating for Prior. Prior also found inspiration in the Peircean emphasis on implication and consequence, entailment. It's a claim of Peirce that the basic question, one of the most important questions in logic, has to do with implication. And Prior shared that view, and of course he studied the way Peirce did that, the way he dealt with implication. Here's one quotation about that, also from formal logic. Peirce suggested that you could, of course, define negation in terms of implication. In order to do that, you need a constant, zero, as a proposition, seen in this case as a proposition. That means that instead of saying not every man is mortal, we sometimes say if every man is mortal, then I'm very much mistaken. So to be very much mistaken is just zero. So you can actually, says Peirce, define negation in terms of implication. Prior was also interested in the very early axiomatization of propositional logic, which Peirce suggested. Here's the axiomatization, five axioms, of course in Polish notation, has to be. Really? And here you can also see that you have the zero. So this plays a very important role in one of the axioms. And this is of course a very early axiomatization of propositional logic. Prior was able to show in a paper that you can actually prove 1 from 2 to 5. It's a very long proof, but it can be done. And that was in a paper published in the early 60s. As you may know, Prior went to Chicago in '62 and stayed there in the winter of '62 and in the spring of '62 in order to study the Peircean inspiration. So there's no doubt that the criticism in '88 was in place. The inspiration is very evident and certainly important to study. The most important result in Peirce's logic, at least in his own view, was the the existential graphs. So I've been trying to look into the material, how much attention did Prior pay to the existential graphs. There are a few sources on this. You may not know about the existential graphs, so just a few words about that. There are three kinds of existential graphs: alpha, beta, and gamma. I'll concentrate on the alpha graphs. It's another kind of axiomatization of propositional logic, which is, I think, very beautiful. And the idea is that you can make everything with just one axiom and 5 rules. And you have this axiom, which is what he calls the empty sheet of assertion. The empty sheet of assertion is an axiom, and then you have 5 graphical rules, and that will be an axiomatization of propositional logic. Just to show you what this is about, here we have the sheet of assertion, and then you can put the propositions on the sheets, and you can draw what Peircean calls cuts. They're really negations. So this drawing here, this diagram, simply means this. We have the negation, this is this negation, and here we have a conjunction, this, and this is really also a negation of a conjunction. So this here is a graphical representation of this formula. And of course this is easier, much easier. Of course this is simply an implication. P implies Q, and of course it can also be explained that way. So the rule of erasure says that whenever you have something which is evenly enclosed, R is evenly enclosed, you can erase it. And of course, something here would also be evenly enclosed, can also be erased. So this is the first rule, the rule of erasure. And the next rule...
So it corresponds to conjunction elimination?
In a sense, yes. Here we have the rule of insertion, which allows you to put something into an oddly enclosed area. So here we have an oddly enclosed area, and you're allowed to add something here. You can add, for instance, the R. If you think about it, that's the way it is. Here we have the rule of iteration, which means that you are allowed to iterate any proposition into a nest of cuts. So if you have the R here, you are allowed to iterate it. That means write it again here or anywhere else in the nest of cuts. Here I've just made an example in this way, iterated it. And this was rule 3 about iteration. You can also de-iterate if something can be seen. Here the arrow is going that way. So if something can be seen as a result of an iteration, then you can de-iterate, drop it again, and come back here. This was rule 4, and here comes rule 5, and the last one, which allows you to get rid of a double cut, or introduce it if you want. If you want double cut around the Q, you can just put it there. Or you can get rid of the double cut if you want that. So that's all, and that's the system Peirce suggested. And then he went on to do the beta graph, which are actually equivalent to first order predicate logic, and he even went on to do the gamma graphs, which are graphical representations of modal logic. There's no doubt that Prior knew about this, and there are a few sources where he actually uses it. I've found this piece of paper, but the library in one of the boxes, box 6, and what is this? There's no doubt about it. It's here is a use of the Peircean graphs. And what is it about? What kind of proof is it? Well, it's he's proving that anything follows from a contradiction. So this is in fact a contradiction, A and not A. You have the cut around the A, which is negation, and so this actually means A and not A. So he wants to prove that anything follows from the contradiction. And of course, the first thing to do is to do an iteration, simply to iterate the non-A. This is very obvious, I know that, but and then we would do an insertion. We're allowed to do that. We insert this one, and what then? Then we can get rid of this one as a de-iteration, and then we have a double cut, and then we prove B. So it's obviously what is going on here. So Prior knew about the alpha graphs clearly, and was to some extent inspired by them. Actually, during '62, he also became the supervisor of J. Seaman. And I met J. Seaman some years ago, some 15 years ago, and J. was very he enjoyed very much having Prior as his supervisor, and they became very close friends. And I've asked J. why Prior didn't write more about the extensor graphs. There are a few. They are mentioned a few times, but they do not play a very central role in Prior's writings. And Jay's response to that was that Prior was not certain what he could use them for. There was some kind of uncertainty there. I'll come back to that in the end of my talk. But now I'll move on to another inspiration. And the other inspiration has to do with time, of course. Here's a quotation from Time and Modality, where Peirce says that many have said that time is extra-logical matter, but Peirce adds that he has never shared that opinion. But if we were to include time in logic, then we would create great confusion, and nobody would like that. So, and he's very much of that way of thinking yet. Nevertheless, a few years after that, Peirce himself continued to do exactly that. He introduced his ideas on the future, and also these ideas on the gamma graphs. which I'll come back to. Here's what he says about the future, and of course Peircean's ideas on the future were very important for Prior. Here Peirce says that the past falls into is a kind of actuality, and nothing of that sort is true for the future. So there's a distinction there, an asymmetry between the past and the future. The reader should stay with the common sense idea and get rid of necessitarianism and return to the common states of nature, and remember that you can actually make choices, free choices to some extent. And here's another quotation about the same. That really the future is either destined, that is necessitated already, or undecided. That's the two possibilities. And other important quotation, which clearly meant a lot to Prior. A certain event either will happen or will not. There's nothing now in existence to constitute the truth of its being about to happen. Now, this is a basic idea in Peirce, which Prior clearly took over. There's nothing in the truth of its being about to happen. So contingent future events are not about to happen. Of course, we all know that Peirce himself, that Prior himself called. He called himself a Peircean, and he did that because he took over this idea of the future from Peirce. Of course, Prior took over the idea of branching time from Kripke, and with some hesitation he worked with it and accepted it. And he formulated his idea on Occamism in terms of these branching time diagrams. And here's a classical way of, actually the first way he presented the Occamist view. In the first way, he actually said that there is a designated line here in red. Later on, he said that we should actually consider truth as depending also on the roots, the chosen roots. So he changed that later on. And here's his representation of the Peircean view. I would suggest that Prior during the 60s were not too keen about the branching time idea, the idea of branching time systems. The problem was that let's go on. That he saw seems that he saw some tension between the A language, which was his favorite, and the branching time system. Here's a quotation Peir has already mentioned. So the problem is that if you look at a branching time system like that, you can easily see that there's no representation of now. This is a be-like representation of time. And so this is to some extent against what Prior stood for. So where's the now in this? Of course, you can point to one element, one moment, and say this is my now. But that's sort of an extra information put into the diagram. So there's a tension between using this branching time diagram and Prior's philosophical stance. So what should Prior have done? Actually, it seems that he was on his way to do something, which would have been very interesting had he lived on to develop it. He was working with the idea which he found in Peirce. Here we are back to speak about the diagrams, and now we're speaking about the existential diagrams. So here's what Prior says in egocentric logic. You can actually study these diagrams, and you can read them as what is the case at the present instant. But you could also read them as what is the case at some quasi instance. And if you study these quotation, it seems that Prior played with what Peirce actually was suggesting as his gamma graphs. Of course, Prior never developed this Peircean idea, but several of these quotations suggest that he was on his way to something like that. This diagram here could be represented in another way. If we were to use Peirce's diagrams, we would say there is a certain now, which is on the sheet of assertion, and then the green could represent the future, and the red the past. In the gamma graphs, Peirce suggests several. You can have as many kinds of cuts as you want, but here I'm using only two: one for future and one for past. So it seems that at least some of the quotations suggest that Prior is trying to find a way to use this Peircean idea. At least that could be fascinating, and that could also help Prior in solving another problem. He has a problem which I think Torben mentioned in his thesis. It has to do with unconnected trees. So why couldn't there be one tree here and one other tree here, totally unconnected with it? There could be a multitude of worlds as several trees, a wood of trees. Why couldn't that be that? Well, of course, this problem will never arise if we start from a drawing like this. And of course, Prior's position on this problem of connectedness is that this question should not be asked. And of course, it will not be asked if you start like that, because there's no way to. It doesn't pop up as it does if you do the branching time. So I'm not very sure about this, but I will suggest that Prior was on his way to something else, using the Peircean inspiration. But we will never know, of course, what he would have done if he had continued working on this. Thank you.